Recording in progress.
There we are. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Manchester Select Board meeting for December 2nd, 2025. We have a packed house here this evening. So we'll attempt to keep things moving. First thing I'll do is ask everyone to rise and face the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. This is the time of the meeting when it would be appropriate for public comments on anything that's not on the agenda. And I would limit it to 5 minutes per speaker. I don't see a lot of hands going.
Actually,
Okay, we have the town treasurer here.
I'm actually here representing the dog park.
Oh, okay.
And I have two questions. We would like to expand the park. And it would involve, the town granting us the extra land. And I want to know, how do we officially get on the agenda to discuss this? But I'll explain what this is, and this is our idea, just so you know, and I can plant a seed. Is we're talking about the north end of the park. So when you go in the gate, it's the far end that faces the creek. And trying to go through that back fence into the woods and create a path like the paths that are up around Equinox Pond. So that people could walk into a wooded area and do kind of a horseshoe loop back there. That's the white part. And we would obviously have to fence it so the dogs couldn't get out. So we would look to fundraise, put a fence in, and then so that people could. Because right now, people tend to congregate down by the gate, and it would just be more interesting if they had something to go down and walk through. So my question is, how do we put together a formal proposal for you, get on the agenda?
Well, the easiest way to get on the agenda is to set it up with Scott.
Okay.
And I'd be interested to discuss this. Looks like about 400 feet of fence.
Something like that.
And it would be encompassing an area that's really not used for anything right now.
Correct.
How much clearance do you anticipate, like, of trees? Would it just be a path around the trees? You wouldn't be
Yep,
cutting-
we try to weave
Yeah.
and take out any trees.
Yeah. Nice idea.
And you have a revenue source identified?
We'd raised funds, look for grants from, there are some organizations that give grants to dog parks.
So why don't we officially get it on the agenda?
Okay. But, we need, before we start to fundraise, we would need approval from the
Right.
town. Because if it's a no.
Yeah, what we don't do is take action on items that are not on the agenda.
I understood.
Otherwise, we might be able to do something, but we'll get it on the agenda and we'll get things potentially rolling for it.
Perfect.
Maybe push this one to January just because we have budget.
Yeah, budget's-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be able to stop.
Yeah, I'll work with Scott.
Yeah,
Okay.
great.
Thanks, Brian.
Have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Drive safely. Thanks for coming.
Take care.
So far, so good.
Out there walking.
Any other hands up?
I'll say any.
See anything?
No.
So we'll get right into the agenda. We need to approve the minutes of November 18th and November 21st.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from November 18th and November 21st.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 4-0. And the next agenda item is to authorize a letter accepting Manchester Main Street bike safety scoping study. How much do you want to get into the actual nuts and bolts?
We don't have to, because we've already heard the final proposal of the project. But this is more of a formal activity that we have to do in order to complete the project and send it to V-Trans.
Okay,
So what they're looking for is, we heard the final proposal on the 20th of May at our meeting. They took some of those comments that you had in the public had, incorporated them into this final project. And the village did the same. And then, and so now they're looking for us to just accept the project as presented and accept the preferred alternatives. And the preferred alternatives are, which we went over before, but I'll quickly go over again. I can find my notes here. So in the executive summary page, which we sent you the electronic version just because it's so many pages and print out all the copies. But the scope and study, just kind of as a reminder, is going to run from Main Street, Union Street in the village to down to Bonnet Street and then extend north on Bonnet and onto School Street, ending at Ems, which would then connect to the town park system. So the preferred alternatives are in segment 1 was alternative 2, which was the west side shared use path. On segment 2, the alternative was alternative 1, which was east side shared use path. Segment 3 was alternative 1, east side shared use path. And segment 4 was alternative 2 about School Street making it one way towards Bonnet Street. Again, this is a scoping study for future possibility. There's nothing on the horizon in the near term, but certainly it's good to have this on the shelf in case some bike ped grant money becomes available.
Yeah. Do we know how the village reacted to either option for that stretch of the highway? One of them eliminates one marble sidewalk. That's the accepted one. The other one eliminated both marble sidewalks, both sides of the street.
Right.
Did we hear anything from them? I know
They had some comments and they included them in there as possible options to look at if we were gonna move forward with this.
And the other piece was the School Street piece where there are people that live on that, and we should probably, before we did anything, would want to talk to them and see how they feel about becoming a one-way street.
And with the school district looking at possible expansion over there too, I'm sure that would be incorporated into all of this.
I suspect that there's going to be something going on there anyways. And the direction of the one-way would be determined by what the needs of the school are. Probably more than what we think.
Including how easy or not easy it is to pull a bus on either side of it. I know Bonnet Street, now that the curb has come out, it is almost impossible for buses to properly turn that corner without almost mounting the curb.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge. And there will be more buses.
So,
So if you're willing to make a motion to accept the final scoping report and endorsing each of the preferred alternatives as listed on the executive summary.
I'll move to authorize a letter accepting Manchester's Main Street Bike Safety Scoping Study, including the alternatives as stated.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, 4-4.
Okay, we'll get that letter out in the near future.
Moving right along. Agenda item number 5 is the Bourne Brook project cost estimates. Possible approval to fund the work. We still have money in our ARPA. And I believe, is that what would be used to?
That would be, yes, so you've dedicated 200,000, that's why I include that in your packet. Originally out of the ARPA money, and we've only spent 2,400 so far. This is a bigger chunk, and what's happening right now is, I know I talked about this before, but we were in a competitive situation throughout the state to be included in this submission to FEMA, and we were one of the few projects chosen based on the several factors, but some of it was that we were so far ahead of the curve on what FEMA was going to be asking for, and that we also had committed some funding for future engineering work. So now we're at that point where FEMA is reviewing it, and the initial feedback on some of these items is it would be great to have these engineering pieces done in advance of their decision. So, and we kind of knew this was coming, and I think I had mentioned it before. So we got an estimate from our engineers, Evan Fitzgerald, and he does work with Nikki. Got Nikki's last name, but she's not of his company, but she's a sub for Evan Fitzgerald. So anyways, we've been working hand in hand with the state vendors for this project, and they're very high on us on this. So if we can get this work done, it'll make it more acceptable for FEMA for the decision-making process. And if we were not chosen, we could reapply in the future for future funding because we're that far advanced on the project.
Well, we originally allocated 200,000 from ARPA toward this cause. And we've spent about 2,500 out of the 200,000. So there's plenty of money in there to cover this.
And this is a not to exceed fee of 131,200. Now, I got an email from Evan this afternoon. Some of the feedback that he's receiving is that there may be a deeper dive needed for the archaeological information. So rather than like a phase 1, it might be a phase 2 that's needed. And if that were to come, I'd come back to you for that money, and that would be about $14,000 to $18,000 more than what they had this not to exceed fee.
But that would still be within the 200,000, so.
Yeah.
It would be.
Yeah.
And that's not that's not required at this point. So I'm gonna look up for that. Sure.
Yeah, I think we have to do it to go ahead to try to mitigate some of these problems that we're having. And we talked about this at length when the engineer was in here, and there was a lot of positive things that can come out of this.
Yeah, I mean, I can, if you want, I can just give you a brief project description again, just to remind you and refresh you. So an excavation of approximately 5 acres of floodplain with cut depths ranging between 1 and 7 feet, the average depth being 2 feet. Removal of an existing berm and creation of flood chutes, approximately 20 feet wide within the cut floodplain. Removal of trees and vegetation across the 5-acre footprint. Establishing a new staging area approximately 300 by 125 feet and construction access route to access the site, and installation of felled trees and root rods within the floodplain and revegetation with native shrubs and grasses. And so that's what we're looking at. Some of this money is going to be used for studies on bats, because some of them are endangered species. So we have to find out if that type is in there. And then there's remediation if there is.
Originally, when we allocated this money, we were talking about it, as I remember it, I could be totally off base, a much more expensive project, and this being town share of grants that might be available to, do the work. And do we still think that'll ultimately be?
This would count towards town share. Now, this particular funding does not require a town share.
Yeah.
But it does like to see skin in the game when it's evaluating us against other projects.
Okay.
You looking for a motion?
Yeah, I think so.
I'd like to move that we go ahead with the Bournebrook project work that we've been working on with VEM for the floodplain restoration. Second.
In the motion, do we want to include the not to exceed
The number,
131,200?
The cost estimate of which is not to exceed $131,200 that we've already allocated from
Okay. So that is moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
That's 4-0. Now, while we're on while we have the ARPA fund reconciliation opened up here, I looked at it first and I saw that we had overspent in two areas. One was website development, one was town road cameras. I guess, yeah, we have overspent $5,612.38 for website development. $1,891 for, no, that's the wrong line. Town road cameras, we overspent by 12,500 from what we had allocated. But we did have kind of a slush at the bottom, which was lost revenue. And I wonder if those two, because the total spend amount exceeds what we allocated on those, if they ought to be moved down to lost revenue, just so that we're not over what we allocated on those two items. Do you
Sure,
understand? Do you understand what I'm saying?
yeah, I do. I'll have Mike make that adjustment on the reconciliation sheet.
We ultimately had to move all the money.
All the ones.
So we.
So it's in the, yeah,
So we had a timeline on when that had to get actually. moved.
Yeah, it was fact that we allocated, we approved an amount, but then exceeded it in a second expenditure.
But fortunately, I think we also had allocated money for other things that we spent less of, so.
Yeah, but and maybe the lost revenue total of,
That's what we ended up moving.
right?
that became
became the
difference.
part of everything,
whatever the balance difference was.
just so we wouldn't lose any of the art.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been asked by a few folks, because I don't remember this coming up, what was the purpose of the installation of the tower cameras?
Is that the flock cameras, I believe it was? Yeah. So right now, we actually had a meeting this morning with Merrill, Bent, and police chief and lieutenant on those flock cameras. The state has changed the regulations and made it difficult to use the cameras for the original purpose of them. And so we are trying to define and find out what part of the flock cameras we can still use. And then the way the statute has been changed.
Yeah, no, the concern that was raised by several people to me was that that was being utilized as a connection between ICE. So,
Yeah, I
those
read
cameras
some of that. There was concern that the cameras included facial recognition software and
Yeah, we don't have any of that.
yeah, they're license plate readers.
Right.
And we successfully used at least one of those cameras to apprehend some perpetrators of a theft.
The smash and grab
Yeah.
burglaries we had.
So-
Yeah.
So that was a positive outcome.
Yeah, they had been doing that up and down the East Coast and
The concern is invasion of privacy, gathering data on people that's stored and maybe used for some nefarious use in the future. Do we store any data from these cameras?
no, and part of the new, we actually, until this is cleared up, we're not using the system.
Yeah.
And part of the new state statute, it had a system where if it was more than 7 days, it became historical data. And the historical data had to leave your possession and be sent to the state, but the state didn't set up any method to take it in. I don't know why. And Flock actually gets rid of data after 14 days. Period. So we don't have access to it anymore after that anyways. So we're looking at ways that we can meet the state requirements and still use the system.
And if someone were to request it through like a Freedom of Information Act, was that something that we'd have to
Right.
turn over?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Yeah. And they specifically talked about ICE requesting something today and they do not work with them.
Thank
I
you.
think that clears up some of the misconception. Wandered a little bit
Yeah.
from the agenda item, but not completely. Okay, this next one is really interesting, the status of the design advisory board. I didn't understand that agenda item until I read the documentation that went along with it. It's an interesting situation where Woodstock, under the advice of their attorney and outside organization attorney, that the select board came up with the notion that it was not legal to force someone to go through an advisory board review. And so the Woodstock Advisory Board all quit. 5 members, they resigned over this. Woodstock is probably more similar to Manchester Village as far as its historic affiliation, but what have you got on this?
Not much more, except that I did get information from the Woodstock manager today. And I did include the league's response in your packet.
For the people that are watching, so that raised the question for us.
Right.
Can we force people to go through design review? Or is it a voluntary thing on the part of the applicant?
That's right. And we currently do make applicants that fit certain criteria, not single family or duplex homes, but anything else that are in the designated districts to go to the DAB. And then any signs need to go through that also. So apparently in Woodstock's ordinances, it didn't have that requirement built into it.
Oh,
And they had assumed
okay, see that?
all these years that it was. So that's the slight differential there.
It's strange for me that the statute would allow you to set up an advisory board, but then not compel people to go through the process. So,
Yeah.
I don't know how that works. And obviously the Woodstock board felt the same way about it. The Development Review Board does not have to accept the recommendation of design review.
That's correct. But in our situation, as you know, we had duplicate members on both boards. So if you're against it, a particular project as a DAB member, you're most likely going to be against it as a DRB. So we're hopefully can correct that in the future too.
But so you think the answer is that the ordinance itself has to in some way
Require
require the
applicants
applicant
in
goes
certain conditions to go through.
review, and ours does that.
That's correct. At this point, now we're doing the review for the town plan, so that could change if that's what the public wants and what you want too. But I just thought it was interesting and I wanted to follow up and make sure you guys were aware of what was going on out there too, because we had a similar system. We were listed as one of 2 others. I think Stowe was one of them and there was a third one.
In the input from the VLCT, this like you just said, single family and duplex, they're stating that the Home Act, and I can see where this is going in terms of like the current, like if the one, in the 1B designation, for instance, you know, there are certain things that do not necessarily require, if it's, has to do with housing, you don't have to do an Act 250 permit, right?
Streamlining the process.
Streamlining the process. So multi-unit residential uses is something that is defined in that Home Act that could therefore be under the same guise of
Right.
single family and duplex as it is now. So I believe the definition of duplex, because of the change in the Home Act, which is that any single family, any parcel of land that's eligible for a single family residence is eligible for a duplex. So.
It's just, it was interesting that in Woodstock, the applicant wanted to tear down two existing historic structures in the context of a larger development. And the design review board, design advisory board voted against doing that. And I guess that kind of raised this whole issue. The DRB went ahead and gave permission for the two historic structures to be torn down. And I don't know any of the particulars, you know, it's, all I did was read the Vermont Digger article.
Yeah.
Sideways, so I had to tip my head in order to read it.
Exactly.
There's a button for that.
Two mirrors to reverse the image back.
Okay, moving right along.
Moving right along, we really are moving right along.
It's okay. It's all right.
I'm trying to drag this out as much as possible
I
for
don't see
you.
why.
Roads, to be named.
We're down to town manager updates.
All right, so I'll start with one that's not on there because we were just talking about tier 1B. So Nick from the BCRC got back to me about the airport road possibility extension. So he says we have to specifically approve that. And when do you want to do that was the question. And so I said, you know, we have a 90-day window for sure before we have to come up with a contract and the due diligence and things like that. And
Not
so,
before, we have a 90-day window.
correct, before we reach an agreement, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so that's what I meant to say. And I said to him, you know, when do you want to do it? So I haven't heard back yet. So it's sometime in the next meeting or the meeting thereafter, whatever he suggests, it'll be before you for that.
Great.
Our fiscal year 25 audit has begun. The auditor has been in on site when his child has not been sick and the snow has not kept him away. And that's going well. And just a reminder that Friday, we have the FY 27 budget discussion at the rec park at 8:30. Bring your long johns. I think it's gonna be cool.
Some of that, that little fireplace, is that working?
I believe it is.
We can have your chair set up.
Yeah.
So they by the fire.
Yeah, we had trouble firing that up one year.
Yeah, it's so cold.
It's not insulated.
Who engineered that bench?
Okay.
Mike's laughing because that was actually a quote from our former water superintendent. And I don't remember the context, but it was, people were questioning something that was in the ground. And Big Al said, I didn't engineer that disaster. Became kind of a go-to remark.
Okay.
Geez, other business.
I just, along the lines of the budget, I'm sure you've seen also that the December letter came out, which is
Yeah.
like the annual
Increase
preparation for what's to be expected in terms of
our taxes.
taxes.
Mhm.
And just as predicted, you know, we saw a steady decline, a pretty large decline in our last tax rate. But there's a discussion of a 12%.
Yeah, 12 plus, and, it makes it it's difficult because our taxpayers, people that are attending by Zoom, people that are in the room, think of their property taxes as one thing, and they go in and they pay their taxes. And I don't think the municipal budget should be held hostage by something that the state's done. So I'm gonna say with the utmost of certainty that people's taxes are gonna go up, no matter what we do. I mean, we'll do everything that we can to keep our budget in check, but we have no control over what the state.
But in fact, it may return to pre this tax rate, like, you know, we went from what, 1.32
Yeah,
to
it went down.
1.09. So, yeah, not that, you know, that's not insignificant, but I'm sure there'll be some maneuvering, but with the school redistricting and everything going on, it's going to be a difficult year.
Yep.
Say the least.
So you'll have yours tomorrow, the draft.
Good.
Great.
Are we gonna be? Are we gonna be surprised?
Yes.
Of course.
All right, I can't wait.
Always surprises in budgets.
Any other business? I don't see any need for an executive session. This one may be a record.
If we let it become a record instead of dragging it out. Come on.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. As Scott said, our next meeting is Friday, starting at 8:30 in the morning over at the rec park house. Scott, will Zoom be available for that meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Recording stop.